Have you ever walked into a room and immediately felt something was wrong? Ever met someone and just knew you could trust them? Or maybe you knew you couldn't? You ever had that feeling you couldn't explain, only to discover later on you were right? Or you go to change lanes and for some reason you just don't? Today we're exploring something that's often dismissed, rarely discussed, and deeply human: the noetic experience, the sense of knowing that seems to come from somewhere beyond logic. And what if our cracks, scars, and imperfections aren't obstacles to wisdom? What if they're actually the doorway to a deeper way of knowing and thinking?
Is it an intuition knowing in the absence of data or actual knowledge? How would you characterize noetic?
I think of it as spidey sense.
Ooh.
And I used to talk to my folks about developing their spidey sense, but developing the experience and even just the recognition that something doesn't quite fit, and maybe then being open to that.
Yeah, I love that. It's that little voice inside that's saying, I see something that you are not consciously registering yet. The gift of fear. The author interviewed victims of crime, and he found a common factor. In the initial interviews, he would ask a question such as, did you have any sense that something was coming? No, it came out of the blue. I was just walking down the street. And the more the interview went on, well, actually, there was a guy that looked a little too happy on the corner. And there was a sound that I just dismissed as the laundry machine. So when we tune in to this noetic sense, this knowing that passes beyond understanding, it can give us some really interesting feedback and knowledge. I looked up the word noetic because it's just so fascinating. It's an adjective that means relating to the mind, intellect, or rational thought, but traces back to beyond the facts. So it's just really interesting. Things that come from deep thinking rather than emotion, intellect of intuition. So cool topic today. Welcome to Imperfect, Better After Broken. This is the show where we celebrate the cracks, the scars, and the stories that make us stronger. I am Susan Hendrich.
And I'm Jeff Servello.
And let's dive in. So this topic, I love it. Most of us have had this kind of experience, but we don't always have the language for it. We just know something, like you said, before we can explain it. How do you know? My mom, when I was growing up, she would quote her Swedish grandmother, my Swedish great-grandmother, who would say, "It just come to me," in her New English, "It just come to me." So that arrival of maybe a feeling, a sense, or a recognition, and only later does the conscious mind catch up. Have you ever had this happen to you?
I have several times, as a matter of fact.
You tell.
So two very vivid ones. The first one, my wife and I were on our honeymoon. We were driving home from our honeymoon, and we were at a stoplight. Light turned green, and just something I just felt, don't go. I was the first car at the line. I felt, don't go. Jen's like, why aren't you going? And the next thing we know, a dump truck comes flying through the red light. And had I gone, we would have been just obliterated because we were in a small little Toyota. And but I had this sense, like, wait a second. So that one is very vivid. And then
Wow.
yeah, so that's the first one that comes to mind, is very vivid. How about you? Have you had a moment?
Yes, many of them. And what you just described is so palpable, and it's back to the essence of the gift of fear. The explanation that Gavin de Becker, the author, provides is that what's happening in these instances can be attributed to a number of factors, one of which is our senses are constantly interpreting data. So, for example, to our listener right now, you are aware that there are two people having a conversation, and you are part of that conversation as a listener, and you're having thoughts that go with it. But there might also be in the room you're in, or in the car you're in, the sound of an air conditioner. Do you hear that? Or a heater. You might not have been thinking about that consciously, but your senses were registering it. The color of the shirts that Tom and I are wearing when we walk into a restaurant. We looked at, oh, we're matching today. Well, why did we do that? What do we attribute that? We have senses and awareness that our conscious mind cannot possibly keep up with all of that data. But somehow at that intersection, Jeff, you had either and there's the divine element to
Sure.
that many would I certainly would be interested in knowing what role God played in that moment for you. And I can't imagine that it was accidental that you were spared excuse me, from that moment. But anyway, for me, I had an intuition moment, a noetic knowing, when I was a child, and I was at a swim meet. I was a competitive swimmer, and I was on the block, ready for the gun to fire for my my race, and I had just a knowing, a feeling that I needed to get home as soon as possible. So I jumped off the block, got on my banana seat, Huffy Thunder Road, and booked it home. And my brother had fallen out of a tree and broken his arm. That was certainly a noetic moment. I have no idea what went into that knowing, but it was there.
Yeah, that's incredible.
What other ones for you?
So early in my Navy career, my first captain, a wonderful guy by the name of Pat Allen, would talk about the ship will talk to you.
Mm.
And we had so on my first command was a ship called USS Squall, patrol craft. We left Jebel Ali, went out of the Straits of Hormuz to escort a ship back in. And so 36 hours later after leaving, we're coming back in, everything's safe. We kind of are like, okay, we're good. We're through the risky parts of things. And I went down to my stateroom and I started to untie my shoes. I was going to take a quick shower and a nap and then go back to work. And it just, something felt off. And I walked back up to the bridge and we were maybe 45 seconds away from having a collision. And we took quick action. We avoided it, but it was just, nobody called me. Just something felt off. The ship was talking to me, and kind of my spidey sense went off, like something's not right.
How often do we override that experience of knowing, that universal knowing, the collective unconscious, and the sense that there is knowledge far beyond our individual knowledge that we are able to tap into it? There's a story from the show Twin Peaks from way back. This is 80s child moments. But in that show, a Native American flute carver is carving flutes from these gnarly branches, and he's being filmed, and the filmmaker asks him, how do you make such beautiful flutes, and each one is so unique? And he says, in each branch lies a flute. My job is to find it.
Interesting.
And what a cool concept for leadership, right?
Yeah.
Don't mold people into mini-me's. Study them and look at their beautiful, gnarly knots and things, because that's part of what makes them unique, and help to find the unique sound that they can bring.
I love that. That's a new way of thinking about it for me. So I'm going to chew on that. Like, I've thought about it though, in terms of what you said about our brains are taking in so much stuff. And so it's interesting. I'm going to talk about this in kind of a roundabout way. I took a class on speed reading. And the concept was, to read faster, you had to look wider. We read focusing on one word at a time, but your brain is actually seeing everything on the page. So when you take yourself from digesting one word at a time to, you teach a paragraph, a sentence, a paragraph, the whole page, you actually can read faster. And so it takes a lot of practice. But that thought, then I came across the book, two other books that inspired me with this are, have you ever read Sources of Power by Gary Klein?
No, I like the
Sources of
title.
Power is a fantastic book because I was fascinated by intuition and in the spidey sense. And he looks at like, how do firefighters know the roof's about to give in before the roof gives in, and looks at all these things. And so then you look at that stuff, and then you look at the work that Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky have done with System 1 thinking, right? Fast, automatic, intuitive thinking, right? Like we all know, right? 2 + 2 is
4,
4, right?
5, beyond, right? But
right?
it's a heuristic.
But there's things that we know, right? The heuristics. And then we get to the point where you have the System 2 thinking where maybe it's a little slower, more deliberate. And I have come to think, based on the work that Gary Klein has done and thinking about it in terms of System 1 and System 2 thinking, that it's almost like we speed read life. When we look wider, or our brain taps into, we're not just seeing the word on the page, the one specific word, we're taking in everything. And so it's actually maybe this noetic thinking or this intuition. I totally think that there's an element of this that is that collective neural link thing that you were just talking about. Maybe it is my guardian angel helping out. I believe in that too. But I also think that it's my brain accessing a higher level of, it's pulling in pieces of data that I'm not conscious of to help me, right? So as a firefighter or as a ship driver, I have been in situations so many times that there's other pieces of data that are running that I may not be focused on, but they're still there. And something trips the thing like system error 505, right? And you have to be willing to recognize it. So I was kind of roundabout, but that's how I've thought about it in a while. Is again, maybe this is just a rapid evolution or a rapid execution of System 1 thinking through a breadth of experience.
My favorite part of the wisdom that you just shared is the last piece. You have to be willing to recognize it. You have to be willing to tune in. We know that humans are thankfully equipped with selective attention. Now, some spouses may have issue with this selective attention, but it's incredible how you see every Father's Day. There's this fun video that goes around, like dads being hero or dads being ballers, something like that, and the kid is like teetering and falling off of the high shelf, and he just kind of reaches out while he's taking a sip of his beer and saves the kid. Again, the heuristics, shortcuts, rules of thumb, unconscious, System 1, automatic thinking. There's a wonderful podcast on National Public Radio called Hidden Brain. And I love to listen to it on the weekends. And they talk about the unconscious patterns that drive human behavior and the questions that are at the heart of why we do what we do. That's a lot of what our show is about as well. And there's 2 of us. So sorry. But in the Hidden Brain, they talk about those unconscious patterns. Right now, you and I are engaging in unconscious patterns of rhythm of our conversations. And we have a give and a take, a question and an answer, and a my turn and a your turn. And there's nothing planned about it. It's a trust that comes from a rule of thumb, which says, Susan will stop talking, hopefully, eventually. And and it'll be my turn, right? So what shortcuts, what noetic thinking have our listeners experienced that allow them to navigate this complex world without being flooded with too much information, but also without being so selective in our attention that we miss important cues?
Do you feel like this is a mystical thing or something that's learned or gained?
Wow. Just when I think there's a science and a predictive model to it, God walks in and what is it? Life is what happens while you're making other plans, and God laughs and says, that's cute. You think you're going to, go to graduate school and this is going to be your path. Let me introduce this thing. But likewise, just when we have a sense of helplessness, or even nihilism of, oh, it's never going to work out, and there is no justice and order, and there is no we question what's up and out there. We also get ushered back in. So I would love to believe what my noetic thinking tells me, which is both are true, that we have a constant sense of presence. You seen the little note cards for footprints, where we're carried when we don't even know it. But then also we can study and we can make sense of things. But the moment we're foolish enough to forget either of them, we get ourselves in trouble. What do you think about that question?
I think you're onto it. I think that there's a little bit of both. So I think the spiritual side of me says there's a spiritual element to it, that maybe my guardian angel is guiding me and helping me. I like that. That's comforting. But I also think there's a part of it that can be cultivated through experience. Again, I think about it in terms of system one, system two thinking. And again, for the listener, system one thinking is fast, automatic, intuitive. But I want you to think about it in terms of flashcards, right? Go back to first, second grade, and the teacher, I don't know, did you ever do flashcard races in class, right? So then it's the flashcard races, right? It was hard at first. And then you study your times tables and your multiplication tables, then it becomes easier. So that was cultivated. That what was system two thinking became system one thinking. What I had to think about, like 7 times 7 is, I can't remember. Oh, it's 49. Right? So I think you can automate, internalize the thinking. So I think from that perspective, it can be developed. But I do think then there's this element of the world speaks to you.
What do you listen to? What do you value? And, what voices are available that will only raise to a whisper by intent? And therefore, the only way to hear that special message is to slow down your mind and quiet down your heart, to sort through the noise and hear what's available to you. And I think that's part of what Kahneman says in his system think. You have that intentionality to break out of rhythm. I always think back to Dead Poets Society scene where Robin Williams has the kids march in the courtyard, and at first it's awkward and offbeat, and then pretty soon you have something they call in music entrainment, where metronome metronome thing. It's incredible. Even time, which is, it doesn't actually stand still, but we will regulate. College roommates will regulate their rhythm, their patterns toward each other. In fact, I remember when I first went to Penn State for undergrad, my dad sent me an article, and it said, you are 60% more likely to take on the activity of whatever your roommate is doing than what you might otherwise have done when you come home. So choose good roommates, basically, is the message. And but that entrainment, or that connectivity we have in Dead Poets Society, at first the entrainment, or the rhythmic joining of the boys was exciting. They were cheering and they were clapping to the beat. And Robin Williams was like, no, dude, that's system one. That's shortcut. That's lazy. Don't get stuck in that kind of thinking, or you'll miss out on your own rhythm.
That's a great point. So Susan, for the listener at home right now who's like, this is a cute story, what does it have to do with me as a leader? what will we tell them?
It's an invitation, I think, to be able to distinguish between knowledge and knowing, in that knowledge is something concrete we can point to. We learned it, we studied it, we've got the sticky notes on the pages, we can explain where it came from. Whereas knowing, I think, is a less visible and quieter form of intelligence. And it requires a slowing down and a turning down of the volume of life. So we make a mistake when we assume that just because something's difficult to articulate, it must be irrational. No, in fact, we must tune into that hidden brain, which studies are showing that our gut is our second brain, right?
Yeah.
That's where so much of our knowledge comes from, and it's literal gut, like probiotics, prebiotics, but it's also that gut feeling, or something had turned my stomach. I knew it was wrong. Tune into your body, man, because it's got wisdom to offer that we don't take enough advantage of.
Such a great point. And I think that that's especially too is we're speeding up the rate of information with AI and this drive for faster decision, faster this, faster that, automate this, automate that. It would become very easy to put yourself in the driver's seat of the Tesla and engage the autopilot, right? And just let it drive. But I think it's understanding that as a leader, whether you're leading at home, you're leading at work, you have responsibilities, and you're going to have these feelings, and you're going to have to make these judgment calls and have these feelings of intuition. And for me, I think about it in terms of, I was rarely blessed with the opportunity to make decisions based on all information, all good information, complete pictures. I never had like the full puzzle to look at, right? It's kind of like Wheel of Fortune, right? You get your R, S, T, L, and E. Maybe you get 3 letters, maybe you get all the letters. But even sometimes when people get all the letters, they still like say the phrase wrong, and Pat Sajak's kind of looking like, what are you doing, right? Like, and I think that happens to us, right? So it's, how do we internalize and process the information available to us, whether it's consciously or subconsciously? How do we recognize it and use it? And then to me, I think that's why this is powerful as a leader is, are you attuned to your gut feelings? And if you are attuned to them, what do you do with them?
My brain is just crackling with questions and thoughts to ask you about right now. There was a movie called Being There with Peter Sellers, and basically Peter Sellers has limited intellectual capability. He asks these he makes these very literal statements, and he ends up in these conversations with these uber intellectual elites who would ask questions, and he would say, well, the grass is green. And for him, that's a literal statement, but they would use noetic thinking to go, oh yes, we project onto others an assumption of intelligence, knowledge, wisdom, things to offer, or lack thereof through the stories we make up, right? That's the whole concept of Rorschach and projective identification, where we will take the parts of ourselves that we're not able to make sense of or tolerate, and we will put them onto others, which is why sometimes we'll get mad at somebody else about something we might ourselves need to take a look at in the mirror, because it's easier to separate from self and than to do that looking into the mirror. Dear listener, what is it that your curiosity could offer you if you just stayed curious a little longer, instead of foreclosing on the need to have the right answer, the full answer, and be done with it? One last thing to offer. My dad taught me, and I didn't even realize it until today in this conversation. We've traveled the world together on mostly my business trips. My dad would buy a ticket and join, and it was so much fun. But we had a difference in opinion about how to see the city wherever we would go. So I remember the last time we went to Seoul, South Korea together, and I wanted to get one of those double Dutch bus tickets, see the place, you get on and you get off to see all the places. And my dad prefers, in every city we land in, to spend the first day just walking the few blocks directly around the place we stay. So I have this vista wish to go far and wide from the the place I am. So to your point about take a wider view, my dad's view is I want to immerse in the immediacy of this space. And the wisdom of that, he would always find cool people, cool restaurant, cool things. And I'm thinking, why wouldn't you want to just go and see as much as you can? And he says that's fly fishing. You're just tapping the surface. I want to go deep into the spot I land. I love that message.
I do too. That's kind of, your dad's right, of course. That's the right way to do it. I say that because that's my preference too. We go someplace, my wife and I always talk about it in terms of, are we going to go a mile wide and an inch deep, or a mile deep and an inch wide? And I like to camp out, really feel the thing before branching out.
So what does that give you from a noetic thinking perspective? Let's take, I'd like to understand that perspective.
For me, it establishes a basis, a pattern, a recognition, something to recognize from. And so I find that comforting. I like to kind of know my immediate surroundings, and then from there I can branch out and kind of start to think about it. Did you ever play Legend of Zelda?
Yes,
the original Legend of Zelda?
Thanks to Tom, I did, yes.
So you know how, like, when you played the original Legend of Zelda, you couldn't see the whole map until you had gone into the area?
Unlock, you would, the shadow, you would, it would be, you know it's there, but you can't unlock it.
So for me, that's how I think about it. Once I'm familiar with this map, and then I'll unlock another area, and then I build the mental picture that way. It's easier for me to construct a full picture. So for how my mind works, that's why I like to do it. Whereas if I'm here and then there, and then I'm over there, and then I'm down here, it's not a clean, full connection. It's more like wormholes or tunnels.
Missing pieces. You used the key word here, construct. So in learning design, there's a concept of constructivist learning. And the idea is you get a piece of the puzzle and you look at it and you study it. And then you get another piece of the puzzle, and wax on, wax off is the ultimate constructivist.
Oh, yeah.
Right? You just get tiny symbolic or emblematic elements, and then you put it all together. My brain, I so want to be that person. I want to be methodical, and my husband, Tom, is the most constructivist. Like he'll go super deep, and like to the point where, hey, Tom, come back up. We're going to go across the street. No, I'm way down here. I'm cool. I'm the opposite, and capable almost of doing that piece. So the story that is most telling of that is when we first got married, Mattel made back in the 70s a football game. It was this green game. It had like just red dots, red lines.
Oh yeah, took a 9-volt battery. I had one. Love it.
That's the one.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
That's it. And we bought one, and I hadn't played it in forever, nor had Tom, but we bought one, and I'm just flinging my hands on the buttons and just playing. And I picked it up really quickly because I was going all the way around, and I was able to remember how to play. And Tom would get so frustrated because I'm sailing into the end zone and I'm throwing 15-yarders here, back over here. But that toward the hair that took off super quickly and seemed like she was winning. No, don't be fooled. Tom was reading the manual, and he was carefully looking at, okay, so you're offsides if you use this button. So pretty soon, my just random stabbing at the buttons was superseded by Tom's actual thinking about the depth of the games and the buttons. And that's kind of how I do life. I can go into any city and kind of be comfortable within about 20 minutes, but I won't know anything. I'll barely remember much other than the fun of the feeling of being immersed. Whereas Tom will come home and he'll have the history of it, and he'll have met an admiral and a general, and he'll like learn the place. And I admire that deeply. His noetic knowledge comes from submerging or immersing himself in it. My noetic knowledge comes from fragments and tiny pieces that I start to put together. Zelda, I go bananas.
It's so interesting to me. It's so interesting to me because I can't imagine for the life of me how you're able to do that. So for me, it's like to understand the shades of gray, you have to start with the black and the white, right? And then it's, again, I think about it. I really internalize that system one, system two thinking. You have to start with the basics and then internalize it to be able to rapidly apply it. And so then that is really, it's just interesting.
So
I
different
couldn't function
way of
like that.
thinking.
Couldn't function like that. Yeah, it's weird.
I ditto. I love that. I had someone help me organize once. I don't like paper. I like to have everything neat and organized. But I will always have a pile. And so she came over to the house to help me organize. And she's like, let me study how you do things. So she's watching. And I take this pile and I take the first thing off the top of it. Okay, it's a bill. Let me pay this. I always, this is back when paper was the thing. Then I would dig into the center of the pile to pull out something more interesting instead of the second piece of paper under. And she was asking me, what are you doing? Why aren't you just going in ordinal nature to address the things? You're all over the place. And I said, that's how I think. I go in here. Oh, there's a yellow paper. Let me look at that one. Whereas I would imagine you might do the second page and the third page as appropriate, as a smart person would do.
I don't know about smart, but that's, again, just how I think. So I'm curious then. Regardless of how you end up with your noetic process, what's the benefit then of cultivating, one, recognizing that you can cultivate or develop this gut feeling or intuition? So what's the benefit of it? And what's the risk of over-indexing towards it or under-indexing towards it?
Really cool questions. I wonder what comes up for people when you ask those two questions. So first of all, can you tailor harness, can we change our nature basically on what is our form of developing noetic knowing or knowledge? And then what is that risk of trying to make those changes? I remember learning about random access memory and what's random operational memory, ROM
Yep.
and RAM. Programming, basic in Plato, way back, COBOL, way back in the day. And I was fascinated by the fact that a computer doesn't look through, when it's looking for a file, it's looking for a random number, 1 through 523,000. It's going to be one of those numbers. It doesn't test, is it 1? No. Is it 2? No. Is it 3? It will test, is it 1? No. Is it 300,000? No. And it will go back and forth until so that it gets closer, kind of like that game. You're getting warmer, you're getting closer.
Yeah.
It will dig into the middle of the pile and then to the end of the pile and then back to the middle of the pile. And I related so much to that concept versus looking through the card catalog one at a time, because what if the number is 400,000 and then we're going to be trapped going toward that and we're going to miss it. So I used that as a way to substantiate my crazy way of thinking. But I don't know if I can change it. It's just like a natural thing. And I think the danger of my way of doing it is that I miss out on the fact that most of the time it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, not 400,000 way out there. What are your thoughts on that question?
I'm approaching this from the perspective of that noetic thinking or intuition is a function of rapid pattern processing. So then I think it's I would, if I were to describe this to someone, I would say cultivate whatever your pattern recognition process is, whether it's 1, 2, 3, or 1, 100, 2, 99, 3, 98, whatever it is. Cultivate it, recognize how it feels, and then there's some sort of risk assessment that I think has to run through it. So if I'm at home and I think, I just heard something. And the sound didn't seem like a sound that I should be worried about, then I might be more likely to dismiss it. Whereas on the ship, I was cultivating my spidey sense. And I always told myself when my spidey sense triggered, I would investigate, because the odds of being right that it was something and missing it, the consequences of that were far more significant than if I investigated it and was wrong, right? So if it's like, oh, I don't know, something doesn't seem right. Back to the scene on the ship. Something doesn't seem right. Let me go to the pilot house. And I walk up and it's nothing. I'm out a trip up one flight of stairs. And I've now added more data to my experience set through which I can draw on. But had I not gone up there, who knows what would have happened? So, I mean, that's counterfactual thinking. And so I don't know necessarily that that's the greatest thing, but I would rather err on the side of trusting my gut based on a risk analysis and putting myself in a position to act than be dismissive and be in a position to where now I'm dealing with the fallout of something.
Jeff, that is an extreme elegance, in my view, and elegance as defined by something being both beautiful in its simplicity. What you just did actually gave me not only a little bit of relief from the strange notion that I'm so weird in my thinking, but it also gave me a path forward. No matter where we are on the noetic, are you all logic and only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or are you in this true, trusting gut only and missing the thing that's right in front of you sometimes? It doesn't matter where you start. Have contextual awareness to be able to titrate or calibrate depending on where you start from versus where you end up. That spidey sense kicks in. You go from your ordinal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to, oop, I'm going to check 1723 because that feels like a number that means something right now. Trusting that all of that additional attention that you have not been able to pay selective attention to, but your senses are pulling it in, honoring that. Every time I've overridden my gut feeling in life, it has not ended well. Vice versa, probably more importantly, every time I have had a strong gut feeling about something, it's never been wrong.
Yeah. Isn't that funny?
I can't think of one time that my gut feeling said, Susan, be careful or watch out. And I went, oh, you silly, you missed it.
Yeah. I think about this. I was kind of mapping this stuff out and I came up, I love little acronyms, right? So here's an acronym.
Oh, bring it on.
Right? Pause. Pay attention to whatever your gut is telling you, right? Your spidey sense, the thing, your environment. Acknowledge the feeling. Understand the context, right? Did I hear something in the backyard? And what did it sound like? Did it sound like a plane crashing or did it sound like a baseball falling in the backyard? Right? Maybe, I don't know if you can hear a baseball in the backyard, right? But like, what is the context? Seek evidence that either validates or justifies walking away from the event, and then evaluate before you act. Again, am I at risk? What's my risk level? What's the thing? At that stoplight that I talked about, waiting 2 extra seconds, the guy behind me may have honked. I don't care. I was in some podunk little town in North Carolina, leaving a cigar store. I really don't care if the guy behind me is upset. He can wait 2 seconds so I can make sure that we're okay, right? I can indulge that feeling, right? That's a different threshold of action than maybe in other places. So evaluate that. So pause, pay attention, acknowledge the feeling, understand the context, seek evidence, and then evaluate before acting.
To our listener in that little town in North Carolina, an accident was saved on that moment. And I love it. I'm going to borrow something you just created with your this beautiful pause acronym, which is going to be incorporated into my daily living. Pay attention, the concept of paying attention. You have a certain amount of let's call them dollars of attention that you can pay in life. And you don't want to pay attention to things that don't matter, right? So if I have an hour and a half after dinner, I want to spend it on kids. I want to spend it on spouse. I want to spend it on self-care versus what we typically might end up spending it on, which is Big Brother and Real Housewives. But hey, so where do we pay our attention, and how do we avoid bankrupting ourselves by paying attention to the wrong things? Thank you for the encouragement to, my favorite part of yours is the understand the context and where is this coming from? Why am I having this this intuitive type of a moment?
Yeah. Susan, so it's interesting, right? So we talk a lot about, and I think we can draw the context between noetic thinking and the idea of trusting your gut.
Mm-hmm.
And so our listener question this week is pretty interesting because the listener who wrote in from Massachusetts said, I thought I had everything figured out. Work was going well. I was at the top of my game. And then I had the rug pulled out from underneath of me at work. And as I'm regaining my balance, I'm finding it hard to trust my gut and follow my instincts. Acting quickly used to be a strength. Now what do I do? And I love this question, right? Because it talks about what we were talking about. This pattern, right? Like I'm really good at the flashcards until I'm not. And then I get hesitant, right? It's like now I'm less in system one thinking, that fast, automatic, intuitive thinking. And now I'm more like processing. And so I feel more on my heels instead of on my toes, right? Daniel LaRusso, right? Wax on, wax off. Perfect metaphor for this, right? Very slow, very slow. And then Johnny Lawrence starts to attack him, although maybe you're like me and you buy into the fact that Daniel was the bully, but we can talk about that later, right?
Sweep the leg.
Sweep the leg, right? But then it becomes automatic. What happens then when you lose your confidence to act automatically? How do we rebuild that? How do we put together those pieces again?
Carol Philpott, my professor in graduate school, talked about in family therapy, one of the issues that occurs is that the map is no longer the territory. Maps by design are lagging instruments, just like laws are lagging to when they need to be written. So we must, very few musts in my life, but this is one of them. We must acknowledge that the heuristics, the shortcuts, the belief systems, the rubrics that we use for making decisions will not always reflect the most current thinking or most current situation. So we build a rubric, we build a belief about life based on what it was like to be in kindergarten or what it was like to work at that job versus this job. And be prepared that when the map no longer reflects the territory, be willing to examine and create a new map.
I like that. I like that a lot.
I love the question from our listener. And the fact that our listener is thinking about the map not fitting the territory, you're halfway there, recognizing that it's time to do the pause model and use Jeff's understanding what's changed to assess where you need to put your energy or pay attention for the future. Oh,
love
wow.
That. Yeah, for me, I would offer the listener that it's natural and understandable that your confidence would feel a little shaken, right? I think about, it's going to apply to lots of things, right? Whether it's golf or riding a bike, right? You ride a bike as a kid, you ride real fast and then you wreck. You get back on the bike and you're assessing the bike, you're kind of riding slowly, and then your confidence builds up again, and then you do something stupid until you wreck again, right? Or golf, right? I'm swinging freely, I feel really good about a shot, and then I hit a bad shot, and now all of a sudden I'm a little tight again, maybe, and I'm worried about it. And as a result of that function, right, I kind of have to rebuild my confidence in that. So I think that that's a natural experience, and it's okay to indulge that. And I think that's part of the pay attention, acknowledge the feeling, understand the context. Okay, where are you? But then I would offer them, intuition is a function of the wisdom gained from experience. So then how do you apply that experience of the rug being pulled out from underneath of you to update that script, to update your RAM and your ROM so that you can process again? And again, natural. Okay, you're a little slow. Great. How do you use that? How do you work that to your advantage so that you can then go back to being as fast or faster processing in the future?
In comes agility and maintaining the ability to recognize when a new construct, a new way is needed. So is my value of how I spend my time today the same as it was when I was 26? Nope. Bucket of rocks at the Rathskeller was a $5, highly valued way of paying attention and spending my time. I no longer, there are no longer $5 buckets of rocks, first of all, and I don't know that I could tolerate a single rock at this moment anymore. So the map has changed, or sorry, the territory has changed. Be willing to take a look at your maps. Some of your values will never change. I believe in kindness and honesty and love. That, I hope, will never change. But how I execute on those values and belief systems has definitely changed over time. I speak up differently than I did perhaps when I was in more of a school-based authority system, and now I've learned how to navigate authority in a way where everybody can win rather than, operating from a base of fear. So being willing to be agile when the territory changes, to develop your new map, seems to me, I'm hoping I can take this advice that I'm giving, a safe way to ensure that you recognize that change is going to come. And most of the time when change comes, it sneaks up on us and we're not knowing it's coming. Thank you for this wonderful conversation. I feel really inspired and I want to go learn more. I love when I learn these new words like noetic, Noetic. Never heard that word in all my years, even though I'm an intuitive-based healer. So I think it's really cool to have this new agile opportunity to have new context.
Absolutely, right. And highly recommend for our listener, check out Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow by Daniel Kahneman, or Sources of Power by Gary Klein. And Susan, my intuition says it's time to thank the people for joining us and tell them where to find us.
I'm going to trust that gut feeling and go right along with it. Thank you so much for joining us today on Imperfect, Better After Broken. We don't have it right all the time. In fact, we're not here to be right. We're here to get it right, which is an iterative process over time. This is the show where we celebrate the cracks, the scars, and the stories that make us stronger. I am Susan Hendrich.
And I'm Jeff Servello.
And we hope you will comment for us an example of noetic thinking, that intuition that has led you somewhere in the right direction, or the time when you overrode it and said, I won't do that again. We want to learn from you in those moments. Thank you for joining us today. And we hope to see you next Sunday and every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern, right here on Sandcastle Radio. Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks for joining us. What's up? You're fine. Chill out. All right. You ready?